Welcome everyone to this emergency meeting to discuss how to move forward, how to basically coalesce a strategy for fighting back against concessions, both in Wisconsin and also as the entire country is watching, across the country as well, everywhere where similar attacks are happening. I'm Jan Rodolfo. I am with National Nurses United. I'm the National Outreach Coordinator, and we have been watching what's happening. We have a number of bargaining units in Wisconsin and have been sort of watching with, on the one hand, euphoria at the incredible solidarity and outpouring of anger and emotion and people really putting their money where their mouth is. While simultaneously being pretty horrified at the dominant messaging that's come out around this, the concept that somehow working people and public employees are the problem here, and that the solution is concessions on the part of working people yet again. And so we felt it was necessary to get on the ground and to bring together as many folks that are like-minded on that set of issues as possible to have a concrete strategy discussion about how we can make sure that the message against concessions comes to the fore. Okay, so that's the objective, and to hopefully to walk out of this room with some sense of strategy of how as a group we can move forward and make sure that that message gets out there loud and clear. And I think that started to happen yesterday, but clearly we have ways to go. I'd like to introduce Jim Cavanaugh, who is the president of the South Central Federation of Labor, that have taken a strong formal position on this line. I
think in terms of the motion we passed in regard to the job actions is in some ways a reflection of the frustration and anger that Jan mentioned, but I think it's also reflective of the invigoration that people feel in the labor movement today. Obviously, a labor council such as ours, which is the umbrella organization for all the unions in a 6-county area here in this part of the state of Wisconsin, does not have the authority to call any kind of strike. But we wanted to make sure, since some local unions were talking about, whether that would be an appropriate escalation of this struggle, we wanted to make sure that we provided whatever assistance we could. So we formed an ad hoc committee to deal with kind of the educational aspects of making sure people understand what a massive strike would look like and what might trigger it, et cetera, et cetera. But basically it was, it was not a call for a general strike. It was more, we knew some people in some unions were talking about escalating through job actions. So we got a committee that's working on that. In terms of the concessions, again, we don't do collective bargaining, so even though we're opposed to, everything that's in the governor's repair bill, we don't have any authority to do anything about it other than in the political arena. To give my honest opinion, I suspect that that's where the strategy by those who are at higher pay grades than myself will be going, is with a political reaction, because the situation we have is the bosses can be taken out, and that's much easier than in the private sector where it's much harder to take the bosses out, and they can be taken out with a set timeline. You can put together a plan, and we do campaigns all the time. So that's that's kind of a summary of where that's at, and I don't want to take up everybody's time.
Now, we had a little bit of education this morning about the crisis of our media, and that is that Scott Walker, many of whom you've heard of, appeared this morning exactly where he wanted to be, aside from a Koch brothers hot tub in California. He appeared at precisely the location he wanted to be on, the opening guest on Meet the Press, where David Gregory said, well, Governor, the unions have offered to concede everything, right? They've said, we're not asking for good pay, we're not asking for our traditional benefits, we're not asking for our pension to be protected, we're really stepping back. We're going to take the money off the table, and we just want to maintain our basic rights. Now, I happen to think that in the struggle we are in here, from some messaging standpoints, that is a useful message, and I think it has won many Wisconsinites who might not even have been sympathetic to this struggle over to it. So I understand that. But there's a flip side to that messaging, which is the heart of the matter. Scott Walker said, yeah, they have given that up. But because they're retaining collective bargaining rights, they could ask for some of it back. No. And then he said the big problem is that's just the state unions that have offered to concede everything I'm asking. There are still some municipal AFSCME locals and some teachers unions that are getting good contracts. Literally, he said it. You got to go check this out. He said there's still municipal folks, school districts, where they're getting decent contracts, where they're still maintaining their pay, maybe even getting a raise that's equal to the increase in the cost of living. He says, we got to stop that. That's a crisis. And I'm not making this up. Everything about this struggle, including the Coke call, you couldn't make it up. The Onion could not do this. It would be too absurd. It just never would happen. And so the governor said this, and I think that's where we pause. Once in a while, it's vital for us to draw the line in the sand and say, okay, let's not constantly keep circling around in the same debate. Let's pause, take a deep breath, and understand that in that interview, the governor of Wisconsin told us, better than NNU ever will, how important it is to blame Wall Street. Because if we frame this entire discussion as a fight over what's left in the pie after the billionaires take their pieces, after the CEOs take their pieces, after the Koch brothers take their pieces, if we are fighting over that last half crumb in the pie and we're conceding that we're not going to take it, then the fact of the matter is the next demand will be that we vomit up anything we did eat so that they can redistribute that. Now, trust me, I've heard some things that would cause me to vomit up anything I've eaten. But the bottom line is they want it all.
I'd like to introduce Jesse Sharkey, who is Vice President of the Chicago Teachers Union, which is the largest union in the city of Chicago.
In Illinois, we have the attacks of a bipartisan nature. Illinois has a Democrat in the governor's mansion and Democratic control of both houses of the legislature, and really, it was the Democratic Speaker of the House, Michael Madigan, that pushed through the pension cuts. We've seen the Democrats agree with sections of the teacher bargaining. I mean, it's not as they're certainly not as rabid as the Republicans. That's true. But really, there is a consensus among the political class in this country that public sector workers have too much. We have to have less. We have to work harder and give up the living standards that we have so that the system can run better. And both political parties don't want to look at the $4.5 trillion of bad debt that was moved from the public books or onto the private books onto the public books as a way to talk about that solution. And so that's the first observation. And the second observation I'll make is that in Illinois, as here I believe, these attacks in the public sector are actually being planned in the boardrooms of the private sector. Our estimation is that our best chance to win lies in actually not narrowing our demands, not on being on our heels, but in broadening our demands. That is to say, if you want to talk about how firing teachers is the way to improve our schools, let's talk about the fact that in Chicago public schools there are 160 local elementary schools without libraries. And in neighborhoods full of poor kids who don't have books in their house, they're going to a school in which there's no books in the school. Okay? And we want to talk about that. And we think that if the union makes those kind of demands and makes those demands on the people who have money, right, that will unite the public, the community, parents with the teachers union. That is, the union has to not simply defend its own narrow interests. I'm concerned about our raise. The teachers unions have to also say, look, all Sam Zell would have to do, who's the billionaire owner of the Tribune, would have to stop writing checks to buy senators and start writing checks to buy libraries, and we could solve the crisis. And we think that if our union says that, broadens its demands, that is going to be the way that we can move forward.
We must pledge to continue this fight. If we don't, all is lost. Not only what we have in our contracts, but as my friend from Chicago says, dignity is lost. Unions have brought dignity to workers. And it isn't just here where we will lose, it is wherever you are from we will lose. The public sector will lose across the country. The private sector will lose across the country. The environmental laws will be gone. The worker safety laws will be gone. We cannot let this happen. Yeah. We are getting comments from all over the world. A couple nights ago, we had Japanese public TV stop down to MTI to ask what we were going to do about this. I didn't even know there was a Japanese public television. Thank the Lord. But we have received pledges of support from Australia and Argentina and Korea and Great Britain and Sweden and Denmark, and I could go on and on and on. You all know about Ian's Pizza.
Right?
Ian's Pizza has had pledges from all 50 states and over 50 countries, and yesterday it was somebody who snuck into the hospital in Iran and called with a pledge to pay for pizza.
That's right. And a weather station in Antarctica.
And a weather station in Antarctica, John says.
Yeah?
All of these people, their eyes are on us to succeed.
I'd like to introduce Eric Cobb, the Executive Director of the Building Trades Council of South Central Wisconsin and a member of the Kill the Whole Bill Coalition.
The main reason that I'm here and the main reason that I believe in what we're fighting for here is that I don't like the idea that our members don't have the power. I want to empower our members again. I'm really tired of seeing the power going up and up and up, and the power going more into the organization and less into the people. You know, these organizations don't work without having our people empowered, and empowering them means that they have the choice, and they are the ones that make the difference. I think it's vitally important that we push forward the Blame Wall Street idea. It's more than an idea, it's a fact. That's how it is. I talked to some of our leadership just yesterday. I said, look, I'm working with these people that are part of a coalition that has killed the whole bill. You guys have offered up these concessions. He said no. That means that he's not willing to negotiate. You know what? Neither am I. No more concessions.
What's a victory here? What does victory look like in Wisconsin? Because the whole country is watching and the pattern will be set here, right? This is ground zero. And so when the Democrats and those that represent workers get up publicly and say, essentially, we're willing to concede pensions, we're willing to concede pay, essentially we're willing to not take on the argument about public employees weren't the problem in the first place, when we're willing to concede the idea that somehow we have bankrupted the state and it's our fault, right? When folks who should be defending working people are up front actually saying that, we run the risk of a victory being defined in Wisconsin as deep concessions is a victory as long as we hold on to a little piece and we lose, you know, we hold on to our rights but we sacrifice our dignity, as Jesse said so perfectly before. So this is a manufactured crisis. There is not a fiscal crisis that he is responding to, and the right wing understands, right, that there's been such a shift to the right, and the Democrats have played into it to such a degree that you can pretend to be standing up for working people while at the same time arguing for deep concessions, right? This room, the locals in town, the working people of Wisconsin, the people who are at the Capitol, are the only people that can give voice to an opposition message to that can actually elevate a message about what's a victory here. A victory here is no concessions, right?